Welcome to Midnight Story Library. Tonight's story is one of the most mysterious and chilling cases ever investigated by the brilliant detective Sherlock Holmes. A young woman arrives at Baker Street with a terrifying story about her sister's unexplained death, strange whistles in the night, and a final whisper that still haunts her. What Holmes and Watson discover inside an old country house will reveal a crime both clever and deadly. Settle in, relax, and enjoy tonight's mystery, The Adventure of the Speckled Band. Chapter 1. A Disturbing Visitor. It was early one morning in Baker Street when Sherlock Holmes and I received an unexpected visitor. The young woman who entered our sitting room looked pale and frightened. Her clothes were damp from the cold London fog, and her hands trembled slightly as she removed her veil. Holmes greeted her kindly and offered her a chair beside the fireplace. "You appear greatly troubled," he said gently. "Pray tell us what has brought you here so early." The woman introduced herself as Helen Stoner. She explained that she lived with her stepfather, Dr. Grimesby Roylott, at an old family estate called Stoke Moran in the countryside. 2 years earlier, her twin sister Julia had died under mysterious circumstances. Now Helen feared that the same terrible fate might soon be her own. Holmes leaned forward with interest. "Please begin at the beginning," he said calmly. Chapter 2. The Tragedy at Stoke Moran. Helen explained that Stoke Moran was an ancient and partly ruined mansion surrounded by dark woods and lonely fields. Her stepfather, Dr. Roylott, was a man of violent temper and great physical strength. He had spent many years in India and had returned with strange habits and even stranger companions. Wild animals roamed the estate grounds, including a cheetah and a baboon. But it was not the animals that frightened Helen the most. It was the night her sister Julia died. Julia had been engaged to marry a naval officer. Just weeks before the wedding, she began hearing a strange whistle in the middle of the night. She mentioned it to Helen several times. Then one stormy evening, Julia suddenly rushed into Helen's room, her face filled with terror. Moments later, she collapsed to the floor. With her final breath, she whispered two mysterious words: "The Speckled Band." No one could explain what she meant. The doors had been locked, the windows were barred. Yet Julia Stoner was dead, and no sign of violence could be found. Chapter 3. Holmes investigates. Holmes listened carefully to every detail of Helen's story. When she finished speaking, he remained silent for several moments. Finally, he stood and reached for his coat. "Watson," he said, "this case is certainly unusual." Within the hour, we were on a train heading toward the countryside. Stoke Moran proved to be even more gloomy than Helen had described. The house was old and partly crumbling, with dark corridors and heavy wooden doors. Holmes carefully examined the bedroom where Julia had died. Several things immediately caught his attention. First was a bell rope hanging beside the bed. But when Holmes tugged it, nothing happened. It was not connected to any bell. Second was a small ventilator in the wall between Julia's room and Dr. Roylott's room. Holmes stared at it thoughtfully. "Very curious," he murmured. Chapter 4. The Night Watch. Holmes decided that we must spend the night in the room to observe what might happen. Late that evening, we quietly entered Helen's bedroom and extinguished the lamp. The house soon fell silent. Midnight passed, then 1 o'clock. Suddenly, Holmes gripped my arm. From the ventilator came a faint sound, a low whistle. Moments later, something moved slowly down the bell rope. Holmes sprang forward instantly and struck the rope with his cane. A terrible hiss filled the room. Within seconds, we heard a horrifying scream from Dr. Roylott's chamber. Chapter 5. The Speckled Band. We rushed into the adjoining room. Dr. Roylott sat motionless in his chair. Around his head was coiled a strange snake, its body marked with dark speckles. Holmes quickly pulled the creature away. It was a deadly swamp adder, one of the most dangerous snakes in India. Holmes explained everything. Dr. Roylott had trained the snake to crawl through the ventilator and down the rope to attack the victim sleeping in the bed. Each night he would whistle to call the snake back, but Holmes's sudden attack had frightened the snake. Instead of returning quietly, it turned upon its master. Thus, Dr. Roylott died by the very weapon he had intended for another. Helen Stoner was finally safe, and the mystery of the Speckled Band was solved. You've been listening to Midnight Story Library. If you enjoyed tonight's mystery, consider subscribing for more relaxing audiobooks and classic stories. Thank you for listening, and until next time, sleep well.